Hi, I'm Angel with FleeceFun.com. Today I'm going to show you how to make the sleeping backpack, a cute little backpack that turns into a sleeping bag. Now just so you're aware, the backpack and the bag are all attached, so they're all one nice piece. So you can't lose the pieces to it, it's all nice. The backpack part actually kind of acts like a pillow with it. For this project, you will need the following. You will need the free PDF pattern printed up and assembled. You can find assembly instructions on FleeceFun.com. 1.5 yards of jersey knit, 1 2/3 yard of fleece color 1, 1.5 yards of fleece color 2, 3 inches of sew-on Velcro, 1.5 yards of quilt batting or crib quilt size package of batting, thread, scissors, sewing machine, marking pen, button, and that's optional. You will also want a large cutting surface, like an empty countertop or the floor. Alright, once you have all those items, it's time to get started. Assemble and cut out the pattern. This pattern is very large. Assembly will take a little time. It's important that you take your time and assemble the pattern nicely for a good result. You can find a video and a written tutorial on FleeceFun.com for more information on how to assemble your pattern. Be sure to use enough tape to make the pattern sturdy. You'll need to cut out the following. From fleece color 2, you'll need to cut 1 child sleeping backpack base, 2 child sleeping backpack shoulder straps, 1 of the outside pocket, 1 of the pocket holder. Note I used a contrasting scrap in the example. From the batting, please cut 1 of the backpack base. From the jersey knit, cut 1 of the backpack base. Then you will need to cut down the base to the blanket line. From fleece color 1, cut 1 of the blanket, 1 of the top hatch, and 1 of the main compartment. You will have plenty of large scraps to make other projects out of, like hats and scarves, and there are several great ideas on FleeceFun.com. Alright, now that you have all those pattern pieces cut out, it's time to start sewing. Begin to make prep pieces for the backpack. We'll be leaving several raw edges on the backpack because it's fleece. To keep the pieces from stretching and from getting misshapen, run a zigzag stitch or a decorative stitch of some type along the edge of the hatch, the top of the pocket holder, and the outside pocket, and the top of the main compartment of the blanket. Okay, time to make the outside pocket. Begin to make the outside pocket. Place the outside pocket right side to wrong side of the pocket holder. Sew along 3 sides, leaving the curved side open, using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Trim corners. Turn right side out. This is optional. Using a marking pen, you can draw down the middle of the outside pocket and sew a top stitch along the front of the pocket to make 2 small interior pockets there. Great! Next step. Add the Velcro. Sew on a 3-inch segment of Velcro to the right side of the pocket holder. Sew the other half onto the wrong side of the top hatch. If you want a button on the top hatch, sew it into place at this time. Alright, now that that's finished, it's time to make the straps for the backpack part. Place 2 of the strap pieces wrong sides together. Pin. Sew each side using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Using a safety pin, turn the long tube right side out. Flatten out as best you can, then top stitch down the middle of the strap. Set aside. Okay, now it's time to attach the pocket to the main compartment of the backpack. Place the pocket onto the right side of the main compartment. This will be the body of the backpack. The pocket is placed just below the curve and before the angled slits at the bottom. Pin, top stitch, a 1/4 inch from the edge of the pocket all around the side, leaving the top open. Attach the pocket to the compartment. Alright, now it's time to make the backpack 3D. Taking the bottom inside pieces, place them right sides together and using a 1.5 inch seam allowance, and that's approximate. You may just want to draw a line on the fabric and follow that. Sew another seam 1/4 inch inside that one for extra reinforcement, as most of the stress is going to be on these seams. Now we're getting ready to add the backpack part to the base of the sleeping bag. Prep the backpack for mounting. To give the backpack or main compartment more shape, we're going to reinforce the sides. Fold the excess tab in half and sew down the middle of the fold, creating a straight stitch. Okay, next we're going to add the straps. Using the pocket holder as a guide, the pattern piece, place it on the right side of the fleece base, that's color 2, and center it. Taking the long strap, fold it in half and place it at the middle top center of the pocket holder. Bring the straps to each corner and pin. And you might want to adjust the size of the straps depending on the age of the child you're making this for. Using a straight stitch, sew on the ends and the center of the straps. Now that those are in place, we're going to add the top hatch to the backpack. Now it's time to add the top hatch section of the backpack. Again, using the pocket holder as a guide, place the right side facing down. The hatch will sit on the folded section of the straps. Pin it well. With the wrong sides of the hatch facing up, sew 1/4 inch from the edge and then sew again another 1/4 inch from that seam you just sewed for extra reinforcement. Okay, now it's time to add the main compartment to the base of the sleeping bag. Now it's time to add the backpack body or the main compartment to the base. Pin the straps and the hatch so they are out of the way. Please note we are making a backpack section inside out on purpose. Remember, Quillos, this pattern pretty much operates the same way on the same principle. But instead of making a simple pocket, now we're going to make a whole backpack. Using the pocket holder as the guide, lay the main compartment down onto the base. The top should be at where the hatch is. The bottom should be where we sewed. Clothes should be placed on the edge of the base. It should be puffy. It's 3D now, so it shouldn't be laying completely flat at all. Pin well and sew on using a 1/4 inch seam allowance from the edge along the sides and bottom. Then sew again using a 1/4 inch seam allowance from the seam you just made for extra reinforcement. Alright, now it's time to build the sleeping bag part. It's time to build the sleeping bag section, or basically we're going to make a sleeping bag sandwich. Pin the main compartment so the bottom is out of the way and the hatch is tucked into the main compartment or the backpack. Next, place the blanket, fleece color 1, on the base, right side facing down. Pin the bottom and the side that doesn't have a curved corner, to the base. Then pin the top and the side with the curved corner out of the way so it doesn't get stuck into the seam allowance. We want it to be loose because that's the blanket part. Next, place the jersey knit base on the top of the blanket and the base, right side facing down. Then place the batting on top of the jersey knit. Pin around the edges well, leaving a 6 to 10 inch gap on the side where the blanket meets the base for turning. Okay? I'm talking about the side of the blanket where it meets the base. Alright, time to sew the sandwich. Now with this next step, please take your time. You are dealing with very thick layers, and it doesn't matter how stellar your sewing machine is, it's a lot of layers. So pay attention with what's going on just beneath the foot and also all the way underneath the needle because you're dealing with so many layers. So be sure to kind of pay attention to what's going on top up here and below here, because they can get bunched up easily below here because there's so many layers. So just really go slow and take your time. There's no rush, there's no race here. So take your time when sewing this section especially, okay? Using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, sew all the way around through all of those layers of that sandwich you just made of the sleeping bag, leaving that 6 to 10 inch gap open. Snip little slits into the curved corners, taking care not to cut through your seam, and turn right side out. All right, now that you've turned the sleeping bag right side out, it's time to sew that gap you just used shut. Since we left the gap where the blanket is, we can hide our stitches. Taking a needle and thread, stitch the gap shut, sewing between the blanket and the jersey base. All right, next is the last but very important step. If desired, top stitch around the base about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch from the edge. This will give a little extra reinforcement for the batting layer and gives the edges a nice look. Again, go very slow because it's a lot of layers. And you're finished. You have an adorable backpack that is great for sleepovers, trips to grandma's, day camp, you name it. Be sure to check out my website, fleecefun.com. All my sewing patterns and tutorials are free. Have a great day, and remember, velvet is pretentious, fleece is fun.